had the Lamborghini. Now I have the Qur'an. Look, my name is Chloe Laurent. I am 26 years old, born and raised in France. And for most of my life, I lived inside a world that looked perfect on the outside, but felt hollow the moment the cameras turned off. Today, I'm living in a way that no one who knew me a few years ago would ever believe. And I want to tell you how that happened. Slowly, painfully, beautifully. To be honest, my early life was simple. I grew up in a small town outside Paris, the kind of place where the mornings smell like warm bread and where the same elderly man waves from his window every day as children walk to school. On the surface, it was peaceful, almost idyllic. But inside my home, there was a different kind of quiet. My mother worked long hours, often coming home just in time to collapse into bed. My father traveled so much that his suitcase felt more familiar than his presence. I wasn't neglected in the obvious way. There was food, stability, structure, but I was raised by silence more than anything else. Silence at breakfast, silence in the car, silence filling the spaces where laughter should have been. When you grow up like that, you start searching for noise, for validation, for anything that makes you feel alive or acknowledged. I was 11 when a girl at school looked at me and said, "You pretty enough to be on TV?" She said it casually, but her eyes lingered just long enough for something inside me to shift. It was the first time I felt genuinely noticed. One simple sentence, but it planted a seed, a belief that maybe beauty could fill the emptiness I didn't know how to explain. By 16, I was already chasing that feeling. Small modeling shoots, awkward poses, cheap studio lights, none of it glamorous, but all of it intoxicating. Every compliment, every camera flash, every moment someone said, "You're perfect for this," felt like a tiny drop of attention poured into a very deep, very lonely well. By 18, my online following started growing. And with that came brand deals, photo shoots, invitations to events, and a lifestyle I thought was the definition of success. Luxury hotels, designer bags, parties with people whose names I can barely remember. I had my pick of makeup artists, stylists, photographers, and when the money started rolling in, so did the cars, the trips, the attention. But the truth is, none of it belonged to me. My face was mine, but only after it was filtered. My body was mine, but only after it was styled. My personality was mine, but only after it matched what brands could monetize. Every morning, I woke up and asked myself, who am I supposed to be today? There were days I would stare into the mirror and feel like I was looking at a stranger. I remember one photo shoot. I was wearing a dress worth more than my mother's monthly salary. Everyone kept telling me how beautiful I looked, but all I felt was this overwhelming loneliness, like I was floating outside my own life. Look, I know it sounds dramatic, but emptiness can be louder than any crowd cheering for you. There were nights I would cry in hotel rooms lined with marble floors. Nights where I had everything I had ever wanted, but none of what I needed. Nights where I wished someone would see the real me. The me without the lashes, without the fake confidence, without the curated perfection. I had millions of followers, but I felt utterly unseen. This is where everything changed for me. One evening, after a runway event in Istanbul, I left the after party earlier than usual. The music was too loud, the lights too bright, the conversations too performative. I felt like I was floating outside my own life, watching myself pretend to belong. I stepped outside into the cool night air, heels in hand, exhausted in a way that no amount of sleep had ever touched. As I walked toward the car arranged for me, I passed a small mosque tucked between two shops. Near its entrance sat a woman, alone, wearing a simple abaya. Her posture was relaxed, almost effortless. Her face carried a calmness I couldn't remember ever feeling. I don't know why I stopped. Maybe her serenity exposed just how restless I was inside. She looked at me and offered a soft, sincere smile, nothing forced, nothing expectant. And for the first time in years, I felt seen. She said gently, "You look tired. Are you okay?" It cut straight through me. No brand manager, no stylist, no follower had ever asked that. I laughed it off, telling her, I'm just tired of everything. She nodded, not judging, and said, maybe it's time to look for something that doesn't disappear when the lights turn off. I didn't realize it then, but that moment cracked something open. It was the beginning of everything that came after. I started reading about Islam privately, not publicly, not even with my friends. I didn't want opinions, I didn't want debates, I just wanted truth. I watched videos, I read translations, I listened to recitations late at night when insomnia was my constant companion. And the Quran, it felt like it was speaking directly to the parts of me that I had buried under makeup and brand contracts. There was a verse that broke me open the most, the one that says God is closer to you than your jugular vein. I had spent years trying to be close to people, to brands, to trends. But God, I had never even considered that closeness. One night in a quiet hotel in Marrakesh, I listened to the Adhan echo across the city. I don't remember crying. I just remember this overwhelming surrender. Like my soul was finally allowed to breathe. The next morning, I went to a small mosque with a woman I met at the hotel, the same calmness I saw in that woman months earlier. I felt it now, rising inside me. I said the Shahada, slowly, quietly, tears falling before I even realized I was crying. And for the first time in my life, I felt real. Not beautiful, not successful, not admired, just real. My life changed in ways I never expected. I closed brand deals, I posted less, I stopped sharing my entire life online. I unfollowed accounts that fed my insecurities. I started dressing more modestly, not because anyone forced me, but because it felt like I was reclaiming my own body. My Lamborghini. I sold it. People thought I went crazy. No, I went sane. The apartment filled with designer items slowly emptied. And the silence that once haunted me became peaceful. Prayer became the anchor I had been searching for my entire life. Every time I placed my forehead on the ground, I felt more grounded than I ever did walking a red carpet. Some days were hard. My old followers questioned my choices. Some left, some mocked me. But honestly, I was finally living for something greater than their approval. My wardrobe became simpler, my makeup lighter, my nights quieter, but my heart fuller than ever. If you're living a life that looks shiny but feels empty, look deeper. Ask yourself why you're chasing the things you chase. Ask yourself who you are when the makeup is off and the camera isn't on you. You don't have to be an influencer to feel this. Anyone can feel lost in their own life. Be honest with yourself. Be gentle with yourself. And don't be afraid to walk away from a life that doesn't feed your soul. Because sometimes what looks like losing everything is actually the beginning of finding yourself. And if you're curious about Islam, read, listen, ask. Do it quietly if you want. God meets you where you are. I used to think luxury was leather seats and marble floors. Now I know luxury is peace in my chest, clarity in my mind, and purpose in my heart. I had the Lamborghini, now I have the Qur'an. And I have never been richer.